Troubled vets of all ages find comfort at Refuge. Minnesota. The vets, some yawning, others clutching packs of cigarettes, trickle into a sun-splashed room for morning meditation. Some survived war long ago, others have fresh memories of combat. All have struggled. For some, it's been alcohol or pills. For others, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. Young or old, these vets have similar stories. Substance abuse, failed marriages, legal troubles. Do not feel bad about your weakness, one vet read to the others. And then they file out. Some to jobs in town, some to the barn to feed the horses, some for a smoke on the porch or to the solitude of small, dorm-like rooms. So begins another day for a special fraternity, residents of the Eagle's Healing Nest, the labor of love of a woman who is the daughter, wife, and mother of military men. Down the winding road, past the squawking chickens and statues of soldiers decorating the lawn, 47 vets who've stumbled in life are trying to regain their footing. The goal is to mend and to go home. Behind every door here, there's a story. Dan Cluten-Camper has been haunted by survivors' guilt and feelings of hopelessness after 3 army tours of Iraq and Afghanistan. He shares his room with his loyal companion Odie, a rambunctious yellow lab, the first living thing I cared about since Afghanistan. Keith Castle, a former Navy man still harboring ugly memories of Vietnam a half-century earlier, is hoping to stay sober and deal with anger that has tormented him for decades. Rick Sorquist, an Air Force vet and medic in Afghanistan, is looking for a new start after the collapse of his marriage and end of his military career led him back to the bottle. For now, they and dozens more, veterans of war and peacetime, share their meals, their lives, and their longing for better days. For some, this is a place of last resort, the one door open to them. At the nest, they can stay as long as they want and return if they want. The men, who range from their 20s to their 70s, share more than invisible wounds and war stories. They have each other to turn to at a place and at a pace with people who understand what they've endured, says Melanie Butler, the retreat's 47-year-old founder. They hold each other accountable, just like they did on the battlefield. This is their comfort zone. Butler has been around vets all her life. Her stepfather, Charlie Pounds, never rebounded from the darkness of his days in Vietnam. He was hospitalized on and off for psychiatric problems. On Father's Day in 1996, he killed himself. About a decade later, while working as a volunteer at a family readiness program for the Minnesota National Guard, Butler saw a new generation of soldiers coming home in turmoil. At the time, her husband Blaine, then a guardsman, was being deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. 3 of her 4 sons were also in the Guard. 1 served in Afghanistan. But when another son returned from Iraq, the war's toll hit home. He called me in the middle of the night and asked me to promise him to take care of his babies, she recalls. He begged me to die. Her son got help, she says, and is now recovering slowly. But his plight got Melanie Butler thinking, what if she opened a small boarding house for vets, a place where they could heal? She had no experience, but figured what she didn't know, she'd learn. The idea didn't seem entirely far-fetched. Her husband recalls that many years ago, while working as a waitress, she brought a customer, a Vietnam vet, home for dinner. He stayed for 2 months. Butler leased a part of a closed state-run school in this quaint north-central Minnesota community, best known for its famous son, Sinclair Lewis, the Nobel Prize-winning author. And 2 years ago, with personal savings, a $5,000 donation from a banker, $1,200 from a small American Legion post, and other contributions, the Eagle's Healing Nest opened its doors on 124 acres of rolling farm fields. Nathaniel Mogensen was resident number 1. A grueling Guard deployment to Iraq left him consumed by anger and suicidal thoughts. I just pretty much hated everybody, and I didn't want to have anything to do with the outside world, he said. Frustrated by delays in securing appointments with his local Veterans Affairs office, unhappy with the PTSD counseling group he'd been attending, and aching after an argument with his wife, Mogensen took a buddy's advice and moved into the just-opened retreat. Every minute, he says, was a positive experience. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you're at summer camp and you forgot about everything else. This was my summer camp. This was no institutional setting. There were horses to ride, an open door policy that allowed him to see his wife occasionally, and work at Camp Ripley, where he could socialize with his battle buddies. Now 31, Mogensen says he's learned to be more patient. If I ever get into a tight spot again, the nest is the first place I'm going to turn, he says. They seriously are like family to me. Iraq veteran Tane Anderson spent 2 months at the retreat this spring and summer, following VA care for addiction to alcohol and painkillers, and 3 years of mental health treatment. I was just a zombie, he says. The retreat's a bucolic setting calmed my spirit, says Anderson, now 44 and retired from the Army. I could heal at my own pace. I had enough freedom where if I didn't discipline myself, I could have failed. I was free to fail on my own, but I was free to succeed on my own. Anderson gradually started visiting his wife and 2 kids on weekends. I slowly built back that trust, he says, and my family decided I could come home and give it a shot. More than 250 vets from 19 to 89 have passed through the nest doors. They fought in conflicts from World War II to Afghanistan and Iraq, or served in peacetime. Some have been medal winners. Others received dishonorable discharges. Some stay a few nights, others longer. All are asked to pay $35 a day, but no one is turned away. State funding is available for some men who can't afford to pay. Vets help with cooking, farm chores, and odd jobs. The retreat also gets a big boost from Sauk Center businesses. A grocery regularly donates food, a salon makes weekly visits offering haircuts, a theater provides free movie passes. The nest is on a National Veterans Registry and is licensed at a boarding house. The men occupy 2 dorm-like buildings, and a third will open for 19 more vets this month. Outside volunteers visit regularly, including mental health and addiction counselors, a chiropractor, and art and massage therapists. There also are Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous meetings and Bible study. Most vets will receive VA services and have come here after treatment at the agency's St. Cloud office. While the majority are Minnesota residents, vets have come from about 10 states, including Texas, Iowa, Kansas, Wisconsin, and Florida. Dan Clutenkamper, who has lived at the nest for more than a year, has become a familiar figure on the grounds in his flip-flops, camouflage shorts, and baseball caps, walking his dog. Though years have passed since he was in the war, he hasn't forgotten the mortar attacks, the grenades, the roadside bombs, and the constant fear of death. In one 3-week period in Afghanistan, he says, his outpost was attacked 56 times. Clutenkamper, diagnosed with PTSD, turned to pot and booze back home, holing up in his parents' basement for 19 months. He eventually landed at the retreat, which he calls a godsend. If it wasn't for this place, I know I'd have been back on the bottle, and I probably would have killed myself about a year ago. But his fallen buddies remain on his mind as he ticks off the names of those who died as they were about to become fathers. Why them and not me, he says. I still ask that question. What helps, he says, is the company of Vietnam vets and an attentive but not overbearing staff. There are times when I'm dealing with certain things and you take a step or 2 back, he says. People notice it. They'll ask you how things are going, and they're, I'm not going to say prying, but they help break you out of that funk. This place has made me realize, 1, I'm not alone, and 2, I wasn't going crazy with everything that was going on in my head with survivor's guilt. He adds, it's us helping each other for the most part. That's the way it was in the infantry. It's the brotherhood again, which is nice.